Hello, Internet. As you can see, I'm once again laying in my bed. I'm not in my pajamas at this point because I just barely got back from my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class where I was essentially tortured by brown belts for 90 minutes. And so, yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to take my shower yet, but I wanted to record this video while I still had some energy. I technically wanted to record it last night since yesterday was when I finished the book, but then I decided, I'm going to do my weightlifting at 10:30 at night, not realizing that that was going to leave me absolutely exhausted. So, here we are. As you can see, if I'm laying in bed, it means it's time for another bedside book review. The book that I finished recently, technically yesterday, is Journey to the West by Wu Chang'an. Now, to be fair, this version of the story isn't actually the original 100-chapter version. This is actually a translation by Julia Lovell that is a heavily abridged, truncated version of the story. So much so that I wouldn't really call this a translation, but more of an adaptation of Journey to the West, like all of the countless others. And if you don't know what Journey to the West is, as you can see from the title here, this is the story where we get characters like the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, and this story is essentially one of the 4 classic Chinese novels that is very much embedded in the pop culture DNA of not just Chinese media, but a lot of Asian media, in Korea, in Japan, Vietnam. The list is endless. There are countless adaptations, countless movies, other books, plays. I could go on forever. If you really want to look at a breakdown of the different adaptations, I highly recommend Accented Cinema's video on the subject. Far more better researched than I could ever explain here. Now, when it comes to this adaptation, it takes the 100 chapters of the original story and condenses it down to 36 chapters, focusing on the main highlights. So it starts with the rise and fall of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. Then you have Tang Taizong journeying into hell, sorting out all of the various spiritual stuff, and that ends up setting the stage for Tripitaka's journey to the west. You also get the brief origins for Pigsy and Sandy, which I think are Juba Jie is like the name he gets rechristened, and then Sandy is Sha Wu Jing, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, so I do apologize. And so it has those highlights, and then once the journey begins proper, you have kind of the main important highlights to the journey, with various demons. A lot of the more famous episodes of the story are actually towards the end of the book, so a lot of their run-ins with Red Boy, Bull Demon King, even Nij. Well, technically he fights Neja in the earlier chapters, but then you also have some of the later things like the Land of All Women, which is a very common, popular episode, as well as the Bone Demon, which is another popular anecdote of the story. And so it very much is a version of Journey to the West that is basically a highlight reel. Like, imagine something like One Piece, which is basically the fan effort to cut down the One Piece anime into a pace that actually makes sense. This is essentially a version of that, but for Journey to the West. And another reason why I would consider this an adaptation rather than a translation is because the story, as presented through Lovell's efforts, very much maintains kind of a fast and loose sort of approach to it, maintaining kind of that fairy tale quality, and you can tell that a lot of liberties were taken in order to convey key aspects of the characters and key aspects of the story that are kind of hard to translate, but Lovell does a very good job of conveying some of those finer details. There's a lot of exploration about the underlying principles of Buddhism, and it also maintains the satirical elements about bureaucracy, because Journey to the West is just as much a satire as it is a nice, fun, religious adventure story, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of the reasons that a lot of the drama gets resolved in the story isn't so much through the Monkey King just beating his enemies, but more him pulling favors from various deities and various gods throughout the course of the story, usually going to Guan Yin for help, or going to the Jade Emperor for help, or going to various other deities for help and calling in favors. That's pretty much 90% about how the disciples of Tripitaka get out of their jam, is calling in favors. Yeah, there is the usual action and the usual fighting, but it very much is a satire on bureaucracy in general, and so I appreciate the fact that Lovell was able to maintain a lot of those key central themes to the story, even with how heavily cut down it is. Again, from 100 chapters to 36 chapters, there's a lot that's probably going to be left out, but a lot of those key central themes are still in place, which I really appreciated. And when it comes to the very fast and loose nature of the story, I feel that the abridgment is very much a good way to convey the more loose nature of Journey to the West. It's not one of those hardened literary canon stories like, say, Tolkien or even Legend of the Condor Heroes. It's very much one of those stories that is very open to different levels of interpretation, different levels of adaptation. That's why you have so many adaptations, because there's just so many different directions you can take and so many different episodes you could cover for standalone adaptations. I mean, when you look at the first animated film in China, Princess Iron Fan, it literally just takes one section of Journey to the West and tells that as a story. And so, overall, I really enjoyed experiencing Journey to the West in this way. I may sometime down the road try again to read the 100-chapter version. I tried reading it in college, and let me tell you, the translation I have, and I think it's a common issue with a lot of translations that try to do the 100-chapter versions, is that it's like trying to read a religious text, because Journey to the West is a religious text. So if you're someone who's wanting a more general take of Journey to the West, that you want just the baseline story, the baseline characterization with the themes intact, and don't feel like you can handle the 100-chapter version, this is a very good starter version of the story to go with. And so, yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a good introduction to the story. It'll get you all of the main bullet points and all of the central themes, and will still give you enough detail to understand some of the finer points and references you may see in other adaptations, like A Korean Odyssey, Dragon Ball, Black Myth Wukong, so on and so forth. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this version of Journey to the West. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it if you're wanting to get into the story. So, yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say about that, and I will see you all next time when I next finish a book.